Title: The Lucky Ball Saga, Episode 2. As luck would have it, Tyler's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the red ball, sitting innocently on his doorstep as if waiting for him. His hand froze on the doorknob, and for a moment he wondered if he was still dreaming. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, but there it was, round, pristine, and impossibly red, gleaming like a crimson jewel in the pale morning light. His mum's voice called from the kitchen. "Tyler, you're going to be late for school if you don't get a move on." Tyler shook himself out of his stupor, grabbing his bag and pulling on his shoes, all the while keeping his eye on the ball. Had someone from the park followed him home and left it as a joke? It was a weird thought, but it was better than the alternative, that it had somehow found its way here on its own. He knelt down, picked it up, and turned it over in his hands. It felt warm again, like it had been sitting in sunlight, even though the sky was grey and cold. Tyler's mind flickered back to yesterday, to the moments he'd shared with his friends, playing catch and laughing. How excited they'd all been to find it, how strangely captivating it had seemed to everyone. But as he held it now, the feeling was different. The charm was gone, replaced by a creeping sense of unease. He stuffed it into his backpack, resolving to get rid of it somehow. School was just a few blocks away, and the streets were already bustling with other kids walking to their morning classes. Tyler could hear fragments of conversations, laughter, the clatter of shoes on pavement, but he kept his gaze fixed ahead, focused on a plan. As he reached the school gate, he spotted Lewis, a younger boy in Year 5 who was known for his love of toys and games. Lewis was already sitting on a bench by the playground, clutching a small action figure and looking bored. Tyler took a breath, deciding that giving the ball to someone else would be the easiest way to get rid of it. "Hey, Lewis," Tyler called, approaching the boy. "You like toys, right?" Lewis looked up, his face brightening as he recognized Tyler. He nodded eagerly, pocketing his action figure. "Yeah, got anything cool?" Tyler pulled the ball out of his backpack, its red surface gleaming in the weak morning light. "Here, I found this yesterday. It's pretty fun to throw around." Lewis's eyes widened as he took the ball from Tyler, inspecting it as if it were a rare treasure. "Whoa, this is so cool, it's so red." He smiled, bouncing it on the pavement, clearly delighted. "Thanks, Tyler." "No problem," Tyler said quickly, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "Have fun with it." With that, he left Lewis behind and headed towards his classroom. He didn't look back, didn't think twice about the ball. He'd given it away. He'd done his part, and it wasn't his problem anymore. The morning passed in a blur. Tyler tried to focus on his lessons, but his mind kept wandering back to the ball. He was glad to be rid of it, but there was a nagging feeling he couldn't shake, like a shadow hovering just at the edge of his thoughts. He caught himself glancing over his shoulder a few times, half expecting to see the ball somehow rolling towards him. At lunch he sat with Sarah, Mike, and Ollie, who were all busy discussing the latest football match. Tyler tried to join in, but he found himself distracted, scanning the playground for any sign of Lewis. He couldn't see him anywhere, which struck him as odd, considering Lewis usually spent every break time out on the playground, playing on the swings or chasing around with other kids his age. "Earth, Tyler." Sarah waved her hand in front of his face, breaking him out of his trance. "Oh, sorry," he muttered, forcing a smile. "Was just thinking about something." Mike grinned, nudging him with his elbow. "What, you got a secret crush or something?" Tyler rolled his eyes. "No, nothing like that. Just nothing." He dropped it, not wanting to explain the odd feeling gnawing at him. They wouldn't understand anyway. The ball had been weird, sure, but it was just a ball. Toy. Nothing more, but just as the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, he heard a commotion from the direction of the playground. Several kids were gathered around the swings, their voices buzzing with excitement and alarm. Tyler's stomach twisted as he saw a teacher rush over, her face pale. "What happened?" Sarah whispered, craning her neck to see. They could just make out a figure lying on the ground, clutching his wrist and crying. It was Lewis. Tyler felt his heart drop, cold dread pooling in his stomach. He didn't need to see the ball to know it had been involved somehow. He watched as two teachers helped Lewis up, gently supporting his injured wrist and leading him inside. The other kids were whispering, sharing stories and speculation, as the excitement died down. "He fell off the swing," one of them said. "I saw him go really high, like he lost control or something." "Bet he just wasn't holding on properly," someone else added dismissively. But Tyler knew better. He could almost picture it. Lewis on the swing, the ball in his hands, the sudden, inexplicable accident that had sent him tumbling to the ground. Tyler felt a wave of nausea, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the ball had caused it. that somehow giving it to Lewis had hurt him. The rest of the day was a struggle. Tyler kept replaying this scene over and over in his head, trying to convince himself it was all just coincidence. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the truth gnawing at him from the inside. He had seen that ball do strange things yesterday with his own friends. He'd watched Ollie stumble, saw the mark on Sarah's forehead. The ball hadn't hurt them seriously, but it had been enough to make him uneasy. When the final bell rang, Tyler practically sprinted out of the school gates, his mind racing. He needed to get home, to escape the overwhelming sense of dread that clung to him all day. But as he turned the corner onto his street, he stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. Sitting there, right in the middle of the pavement, was the red ball. Just as perfect, just as pristine, as if it had never left his sight. Tyler's hands began to shake as he approached it, his stomach knotting with fear. He glanced around, half expecting to see someone watching him, maybe one of his friends playing a joke. But there was no one else on the street, only the eerie silence and the ball waiting patiently for him. He took a shaky breath, bending down to pick it up. The moment his fingers touched its smooth surface, he felt a jolt of warmth, like the ball was alive, pulsing faintly in his hand. He recoiled, nearly dropping it, but he couldn't let go. It was as if the ball wouldn't let him. Tyler ran the rest of the way home, clutching the ball tightly, unable to shake the feeling that it was somehow watching him. He dashed up the steps, slammed the front door shut, and went straight to his room, tossing the ball onto his bed as though it was something foul. He stared at it, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why did it keep coming back to him? Why had Lewis been hurt? Was he imagining things, or was there something truly wrong with it? Tyler forced himself to sit down, closing his eyes and taking deep, steadying breaths. He had to get rid of it once and for all. He couldn't just pass it on to someone else, not after what had happened to Lewis. No, he had to find a way to make it disappear completely. That evening, Tyler waited until his parents had gone to bed before sneaking outside. The house was dark and quiet, the streets empty, and he felt strangely emboldened by the cover of night. He held the ball in his hands, its red surface gleaming even under the faint glow of the street lamp. He made his way to the alley behind his house, where the bins were kept. He opened one of them and took a deep breath before tossing the ball inside, watching it disappear among the rubbish bags. He slammed the lid shut and took a step back, feeling an odd mix of relief and guilt. There, it was gone. It couldn't hurt anyone else now. Tyler went back inside, climbed into bed, and tried to sleep. But his dreams were restless, filled with flashes of the red ball, of Lewis's pained face, of his friends' laughter turning into screams. The ball bounced through his dreams, a crimson blur that seemed to follow him wherever he ran. He woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the first rays of dawn creeping through his curtains. He sat up, wiping his forehead, telling himself it was just a bad dream. But as he glanced down, he felt his stomach drop, cold fear gripping him once more. There on his desk sat the red ball. It was waiting as if it had never left.